Life. This is Regionally Speaking. I'm your host, Steve Walsh. The conviction of 20-year-old Dustin McCowan brings to close one chapter in the life and untimely death of 19-year-old Amanda Bach. The body of the Porter County resident was found about 300 yards from Dustin McCowan's home in Wheeler. Later in the hour, we're actually going to talk to the detective that's working on the case and the investigation into the potential role of Dustin's father. But for now, we turn to Amanda's parents, Sandra and Bill Jr., who were in the courtroom and whose lives have been, of course, at the center of this tragedy since Amanda's death back in September of 2011. Welcome to the both of you.
Good morning.
Morning, Steve.
Before we get into anything else, how are the two of you holding up? This has been just the longest travail that any parent can imagine.
We still haven't processed the magnitude of our loss, is what I feel. And justice is as close as we'll get, but it's a far cry from a sigh of relief, I feel.
Okay, so there is really no relief in this, even with his conviction.
No, not really. There's some satisfaction just to know that he won't be on the streets hurting or messing up other families' lives as he did with ours. That's about the only satisfaction we have.
Well, tell us a little bit about Amanda. What was she like?
She was vibrant, exciting. She brought the joy in our life. Our home is quiet and sad without her. She was a genuine human being. She always wanted others to feel good about themselves, and she was full of compliments to others. And I feel she had the confidence to reject Dustin, and she paid with her life, and she couldn't see evil coming because she only had love and security in her life.
We'll get to her relationship with Dustin, but when we see this outpouring, it's not just an outpouring of people sort of following the case. There's that, remember Amanda posting on Facebook. We saw an outpouring of people who came to search for her right after her death to scour the woods to see if she could be found. And now we see outside of the courtroom every day students that look about the same age as Amanda coming to the court, carrying signs, and then erupting in cheers when the verdict came in. What was it about Amanda that created that kind of a groundswell?
Well, Amanda touched all of their lives. It was outside the courtroom was a lot of her friends and some neighbors, and she touched their lives, growing up with them, going to school with them, and which we found out after her passing what she meant to all of her friends, and exactly how vibrant she was outside of us. Is I guess the best way I can answer that.
All right, so what was her relationship with Dustin McCowan, 20-year-old from Wheeler? Were they there? He's often described as her boyfriend. Were they boyfriend and girlfriend at the time that this happened?
No, no, they were not. They were off and on, kind of boyfriend and girlfriend relationship, and she wanted to remain friends with him, but not as boyfriend and girlfriend, and she wanted things to be back to the way they were before they were boyfriend and girlfriend, like just hang out with the gang, the friends, Brandon Hutchins and Allie Boldy and Dustin McCowan and herself. But,
how did they meet? They're not from the same high school, are they?
Right, no. Well, there was a friend that had gone to Wheeler High School and moved to Portage, and became a friend of Amanda's, and then she introduced Amanda to some of her Wheeler friends, and he happened to be one of them.
Okay, so that's where the connection came in. How well did you know Dustin, and what was he like when you knew him?
We've met him on several occasions. He's come to our home on several occasions. I really didn't care from him, from the things that I had seen of him and the things that Amanda told me about him. And, we welcomed him into our home. There were occasions when he was here with the, other kids, not just him and Amanda. And I always, how you guys want some snacks and something to drink, and most of the kids would be like, "Oh, sure," or "No, thank you, Mrs. Bach." But he was just kind of gave a grunt.
Kind of a grunt.
Like, yeah, just he wasn't very polite.
I would think Bill, go ahead.
Well, he just wasn't as open and as friendly as, say, Brandon was when he was here to us. As we didn't really put anything together with that. Just thought he was a quiet person when he was around us.
Right. And you would think, son of a Crown Point police officer, you think, this kid's coming from a pretty decent home here. It can't be all bad.
Right. That's why when they would be on and off again, I thought, well, the last time they got together, I thought, well, maybe he's come around, and he's just going to come around and not be the type of person that he had been with her before. So, yeah, I didn't encourage her to see him, but I often discouraged her, but it didn't work.
All right. Maybe he was going to be a different person than the kind of person he was before, and by that, kind of quiet and withdrawn?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and kinder to her, because he wasn't very kind to her.
All right. So, and of course, this is all just played out once again in court, but when was the last time you saw Amanda? When was that?
Well, Bill, I saw her the night of it was the 15th of September, a very early morning, because I was leaving for the airport, and she helped me carry my bags out. And I asked her to take care of her dad and sister Sarah, and I told her I loved her, and I did give her a hug goodbye, and that was the last time I saw her. But Bill saw her, spent the day with her, if you want to tell him that.
Yeah, I said spent off day Thursday because I was off of work, and she was off of work also, and so we decided to spend a day together. We ate lunch at Subway here in Portage, and I did some errands for my father and went over to his house, and so me and Amanda went over there, and then shortly after that I had to come home because my other daughter, Sarah, was coming home from school, and so then we sort of spent the evening together a little bit. I had to run Sarah for some errands, but then came back, and I know Amanda was upstairs Skyping to some people, and then we had all sat down and watched Jersey Shore like around 7:30 or so, because Amanda wanted us to. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been watching Jersey Shore, but
it was her
but
show.
She wanted all of us to, so that's what we did. And
so you did that as a family, and then at some point she's a 19-year-old, so she goes over to McCowan's house to play video games? Is that...
Well, what she had originally had told me, she was going to visit her cousin at Stardust Bowl, which they had done off, and
because
had gone over to the bowl.
Would be happy with her going to Dustin's house.
Yeah.
Okay. You think she knew that you probably wouldn't be very excited about that, so there's a kind of she's 19, she's over 18, but still probably decided to keep it to herself.
Yeah, he had texted her earlier in the day, and she had told me about it. And when we were at Subway, I had just told her, "Man, you really need to just end it with this kid because he's going nowhere, and all he does is hurt you, and you just need to move on." Is what I told her, and we had been telling her that because she was emotionally getting hurt. And, we were telling her, "Hey, you can't do this. You can't do that." We were just giving her advice and what we thought she should do.
And you keep saying that she was emotionally hurt by him. In what way? I mean, what was going on?
Well, he was verbally abusive to her. I know she did something to him and that he wasn't very happy with, and he did tell her at one point, "You're a poor excuse for a human being, and you don't deserve to be alive."
When she told you that, what was your reaction?
I told her, "He's a psycho. You need to stay away from him. Let another girl have him. Just stay away from him."
Bill, you mentioned that he texted her earlier in the day when you were with her. What do you know what he said to her?
Well, all he said was, I asked her what did he text, and she had said just like, "Yo," And I said, well, what did you text back? And she said, hey. And then after that, we dropped it, and we just had that little conversation about, her needing to move on, and it just sort of left it at that.
All right, and so then she goes there, and that's really the last time anybody reports seeing her alive.
Yeah, she had originally planned to go to meet her cousin at Stardust, and those plans sort of had changed somewhere in the course there.
And you did say, Bill, that she did change her clothes from what you had seen her wearing all day before she went out. So that's kind of, that's why they're making a big deal about what he had said she was last seen wearing. He spent the day with her, and that's what he described as her clothing. But she did change, as she did often, and as most girls do when they're going to go out. They change their clothes into something else.
Right. I've got a 15-year-old. Typically, a lot of makeup involved too.
Yeah.
And so then the next day, her body is ultimately found. Dustin is brought into the guidance counselor's office over at Union Township to talk about this, and then he goes off to Bloomington for a while. But at some point, Bill, you actually are able to confront him at some point, because you get on the stand and say that he couldn't look you in the eye. When did you confront him?
Well, when after I had went over to the, met the officers where the car was, I had started my own search through Wheeler and through the area, and at one point I decided to go over to the McCowan house to find out what was going on, because what my cousin, my niece was telling me of what Amanda was supposed to do, and what Dustin was telling me were two different stories. So I went over there just to see if they had found any information out. And at that point, Dustin was home with Allie, who had come over there, and then his father was home also.
Okay, and this is before he went down to Bloomington?
Yeah, this was early in the morning, after I had gotten the car from the police and started looking around around the Dean's Wheeler area, walking down tracks and just looking for any kind of clues. I was knocking on doors in Wheeler and just seeing if anybody had any information, if they had seen anything. And this was, at that point they were just treating it as a missing girl. So I was just doing my own investigation, and I just wanted to get some more information from Dustin, face to face.
Had they found the car at that point?
Yes, they had found the car around 3:45 in the morning, I believe it was.
And this is the car that has the flat tire, but they ultimately decide that this was punctured with a screwdriver and that the seat was too far back for Amanda to actually have driven it there, and it was turns up as abandoned, reported by, I guess, a newspaper delivery truck. Bill, you mentioned that you had, his dad was there, Joseph Elliot McCowan. How well did you know the dad?
I didn't know the dad at all. I had never met him. Just heard some things through Amanda, but that's, and I knew he was a police officer, but that's about all I knew about him.
Okay. What did he say?
You know what? I really don't recall exactly what he said. He came out later, after Dustin was out, and I had already asked Dustin a few questions, and he didn't really have much to say. I don't really recall what he did say,
But he did ask you about the car, didn't he?
Yeah, the first thing he did say when he came out of the door, which I thought was odd, was did they process the car? And I thought that was an odd question, because the first thing Dustin had asked me when he came out of the car was, did they print the car? And I just thought that was an odd question. I just sort of shook my head, and said, the car's at my house, or something in that order. And
okay, so they were very curious about the car.
Yeah, which, at the time I wasn't thinking anything of those lines, so I was just trying to find my daughter.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. So, That press conference yesterday, and we're going to be talking with the detective that's in charge of the case, Jeff Biggs, a little later in the show. And actually, we're going to play an interview that I did with Elliot McCowan, the dad, almost a year ago, like on February 20th of 2012, where he was offering a $10,000 reward, or he said somebody was offering that reward. He wouldn't say who. But after hearing that press conference, I mean, what's your impression?
Our impression of
what?
Of where the case is going from here.
Well, I'd like to say I know I have 100% positive, and I believe that we do have Amanda's killer where he belongs, and it wasn't some creeper or a serial killer roaming the Midwest and Florida as suggested by Elliot McCowan. Anyway.
Where it goes from here, we really don't have an idea of what's happening or what Porter County's doing. We're really not up to speed as far as that. We're just familiar with what happened to Amanda and
you only have the one meeting with him, and he asked some questions about the car, and that's really all you know about that whole aspect of the case.
Right. And he never, as suggested by his defense attorneys, he didn't initiate any phone calls to us or texts to us. They were in response to Bill having called Dustin and myself having texted Dustin.
Yeah, he missed my call, so he called me back.
Right. He didn't reach out to us.
So at no point did he come and say, have you heard about Amanda? What's going on? How can I help? None of that came from Dustin?
No.
Okay. He's going to be sentenced on March 28th, 2 o'clock. That's when it's scheduled. What do you want to see happen there?
We'd like the full the sentencing of 65 years. As,
right.
As everybody knows, that'll be 32 and a half years, and he's always spent 2 years, so at max he would spend about another 30 years in prison.
Yeah.
Which puts him out at my age.
All right.
So he's still somewhat of a young man when he gets out of prison.
Do you think he received a fair trial? That's what his attorneys argue, that it was a Porter County jury. This is a very high-profile case in Porter County. People were following it very closely. Do you think he received a fair trial?
Absolutely.
Definitely so. And he hasn't shown her any mercy, so why should the judge? And and I'm hoping for the max also. And he has shown no remorse, and he will not take responsibility. And until he does so, he needs to accept responsibility for his actions. And I don't know. That's how I feel.
His attorneys had the opportunity to pick the jurors and select them, and that's what they did.
Are you disappointed at all that they didn't go even further and seek the death penalty?
Oh, yeah. Well,
Did you urge them to do that?
Not really. I wouldn't want the death penalty because that's the easy way out. I want him to suffer like our daughter did.
And that would be to spend all of that time, most of his life in prison.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would like that. I would love life without parole.
Exactly.
And we've got just about a minute left, and I just want to ask, where do the two of you go from here? I mean, is this at least closing some chapter for you?
That's a good question. I can't answer that one, to be quite honest with you.
Have you given a lot of thought to it at this point?
We haven't had time to. I know we just have to get back to life. We have to get back to a new normal. And
take care of our other daughter.
How old is Sarah?
15.
15. Okay. So how is she taking all of this?
Well, she's a very how would you put it? Introverted type of person. She's quiet, but she's all right.
Keeps a lot of it to herself.
Yeah, she keeps a lot of it.
We are going to counseling, all of us, and have been.
Makes perfect sense.
We believe that's, making progress with her and with us.
All right, and if she's quiet, it may take a couple years before you really know what she's feeling, but thankfully, at least in that case, you have all the time you need to make that right. Sandra and William Bach, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Steve.
All right, this is Regionally Speaking. I'm your host, Steve Walsh. Coming up after the news, exclusive interview that I did with Elliot McCowan.